We speak with one local socks brand to find out how it transformed from a once struggling firm into a successful one.
In 1960, the average American household spent over 10% of their income on wardrobes, buying fewer than 25 garments a year. Today, we spend less than 3% of our income, but purchase nearly 70 pieces of clothing annually. They replaced durability with disposable plastic. You are being actively trained to expect your clothes to tear, pill, and fade within a month. But here are the only 6 women's clothing brands you can still trust. This is the ultimate buy it for life list. We start with a brand that destroys the concept of a disposable foundation. Number 6. Darn Tough, the immortal foundation. The hosiery industry is one of the most brilliant, quietly destructive scams in the modern retail landscape. When you walk into a big box store and buy a plastic bag containing 12 pairs of socks for $15, you think you are getting a bargain. In reality, you are buying a product explicitly engineered to fail. The corporations blend low-grade cotton with weak polyester and cheap elastic. They sew a thick, irritating seam straight across the toes. Within exactly 3 months of friction, the heel blows out, the elastic at the ankle warps, and the sock slides down your foot. You throw them in the trash and blindly buy another plastic bag. Darn Tough looked at that cycle of engineered failure and decided to break the system. They are a family-owned knitting mill operating out of Northfield, Vermont. They do not outsource their labor to cheap overseas factories. They do not use cheap synthetic blends as their primary material. They use high-density, fine-gauge merino wool. Merino wool is an absolute biological miracle. It naturally regulates the temperature of your foot, meaning it keeps you warm in the freezing winter and pulls heat away from your skin in the blistering summer. It is antimicrobial, meaning the bacteria that causes foot odor literally cannot survive on the fabric. You can wear a single pair of Darn Tough socks for 3 days of heavy hiking, and they will not smell. But the true reason this brand is an absolute goldmine is their terrifying commitment to their product. Darn Tough offers an unconditional lifetime guarantee. That is not a marketing gimmick. It is an ironclad legal promise. If you manage to wear a hole in the heel, if the elastic ever fails, or if the sock simply stops performing to your exact standard, you mail them back to the factory in Vermont. They will inspect the damage, and they will mail you a brand new pair of socks free of charge. No receipt required, no expiration date. To offer a guarantee that aggressive, the manufacturing process has to be flawless. They knit their socks on incredibly small diameter needles, which creates a density of yarn in a tiny space. This high-density knit acts like physical armor against the friction of your boots. They also use a specialized technique to create a seamless toe, eliminating the exact weak point that destroys cheap multi-pack socks. One long-term reviewer wrote, "I bought 3 pairs of Darn Tough hiking socks 7 years ago. I have worn them across hundreds of miles of trails, washed them in harsh machines, and shoved them into tight leather boots. They look identical to the day I bought them. The elastic has not yielded a single millimeter. I used to spend $30 a year replacing cheap cotton socks. I haven't bought a new pair of socks in 7 years." The retail industry relies on your constant, endless repurchase of cheap basics. Darn Tough forces you to realize that spending $25 on a single pair of socks is not an expense. It is a permanent investment that terminates your relationship with the hosiery aisle. Fixing your absolute foundation is crucial, but the next brand tackles the weakest link in your daily uniform, using a heavy fabric that actually gets stronger the more you abuse it. Number 5. American Giant, the Heavyweight Rebellion. The standard American t-shirt and hoodie used to be symbols of rugged, working-class durability. Today, they are tissue-thin casualties of the fast fashion machine. If you buy a standard sweatshirt at a modern mall, you are buying a garment made from short staple cotton fibers. Because the fibers are incredibly short, they require synthetic polyester to hold them together. The factories use a continuous circular knitting machine to create giant tubes of fabric, which are then sliced apart and sewn together as cheaply as possible. The second you put that cheap hoodie in the washing machine, the tension of the cheap fabric releases. The side seams violently twist toward the front of your stomach. The collar stretches out and ripples like bacon. The cheap plastic zipper derails. The garment is ruined in 6 washes. American Giant watched the total collapse of the American textile industry and decided to build a fortress. They famously set out to create the greatest hoodie ever made, and they achieved it by ignoring modern manufacturing shortcuts. American Giant sources every single ounce of their cotton directly from American farms. They process it, spin it, and sew it entirely within a domestic supply chain. The secret to their absolute invincibility is the weight of the fabric. The standard fast fashion sweatshirt weighs roughly 5 ounces per square yard. It feels like wearing a heavy paper towel. American Giant uses a custom-developed, heavy-duty combed ring-spun cotton fleece that weighs an astonishing 12.4 ounces per square yard. When you pick up one of their classic full-zip hoodies, it does not feel like a piece of clothing. It feels like heavy physical armor. They do not use the cheap circular knitting method. They cut their heavy fleece across the grain and sew it with industrial-grade flatlock stitching. This means the sweatshirt will literally never twist, warp, or lose its structural shape, regardless of how many times you boil it in a washing machine. Instead of using cheap plastic hardware that snaps under pressure, they use custom-machined heavy metal zippers and thick metal grommets for the drawstrings. The hood is double-lined, so it physically stands up and blocks the wind instead of collapsing against the back of your neck. One former fashion executive wrote, "I bought an American Giant hoodie 9 years ago. I have used it to chop wood. I have thrown it on the dirt. And my dog uses it as a bed. The cotton has faded beautifully, but the cuffs are still incredibly tight. The zipper is flawless, and the seams are impenetrable. It is the only piece of clothing I own that genuinely feels indestructible." The fashion industry wants you to view basics as disposable layers. American Giant proves that if you use the correct materials and refuse to compromise the stitching, a simple cotton hoodie can survive an entire decade of daily warfare. Heavy cotton provides the ultimate armor for a cool weekend, but our next brand has spent over a century perfecting a material that defies the freezing cold, and it involves harnessing the power of an animal that refuses to die. Number 4. Pendleton, the generational wool. Walk into any modern department store in November, and you will see tables stacked high with thick, fluffy winter sweaters. You look at the price tag, and it seems reasonable. Then, you look at the tiny white tag sewn inside the collar. It reads, 100% acrylic, or 100% polyester. You are not buying a winter sweater. You are buying a heavy plastic bag disguised as clothing. The retail industry has convinced you to wrap your body in cheap petroleum derivatives. Acrylic and polyester are dead materials with zero natural thermoregulating properties. When you wear a thick plastic sweater, your body heat gets trapped inside the synthetic shell. You begin to sweat, and the plastic holds that freezing moisture directly against your skin. Furthermore, acrylic fibers are notoriously weak. After 3 days of basic friction from your seatbelt or desk chair, the sweater will develop ugly pills across the chest and arms. It becomes a visual disaster that you throw into a landfill before spring arrives. Pendleton Woolen Mills operates in a different universe. They are a family-owned American company that has been weaving world-class fabric since 1863. They do not mess with synthetic plastic. They deal entirely in 100% pure virgin wool. Wool is an evolutionary masterpiece engineered to keep an animal alive in brutal, freezing conditions. A single fiber of wool has a complex, scaled microscopic structure. The outside of the fiber naturally repels liquid water, meaning a light rain or a spilled cup of coffee will bead up and roll right off the fabric. However, the inside of the fiber can absorb massive amounts of water vapor without ever feeling wet to the touch. This means the wool aggressively pulls your sweat away from your body and vents it out into the atmosphere. You stay bone dry and warm. Pendleton is a buy-it-for-life goldmine because they own and operate their own weaving mills in Oregon and Washington. Most modern clothing brands contract the cheapest bidder overseas. Pendleton controls the physical process from the raw fleece arriving at the loading dock to the final heavy stitch. They dye the raw wool long before it is spun into yarn, a rigorous process known as dyeing in the wool. Fast fashion brands print cheap colors onto the surface of a finished synthetic garment, which quickly fades in the wash. Because Pendleton dyes the raw fiber itself, the rich, vibrant colors of a heavy flannel shirt or a coat are permanently locked deep inside the material. The color will not bleed, and it will not fade after decades of exposure to the sun. One generational customer shared, "My mother bought a heavy Pendleton wool coat in 1982. She wore it every winter for 30 years. She passed it down to me, and I have worn it for the last 10. The fabric has not thinned, the structure of the shoulders remains perfect, and it still blocks the freezing wind." The only true enemy this coat has ever faced is a rogue moth. The modern retail giants want you buying a new, cheap acrylic sweater every autumn. They need your wardrobe to fail to keep their profits high. Pendleton builds a heavy, biological fortress that ignores the passage of time. Let's step back into the elements, because wool is perfect for the freezing cold. But to protect yourself from a violent, relentless rainstorm, you need a brand that relies on a terrifyingly simple, centuries-old medieval technology. Number 3. Barbour, the waxed armor. If you need a rain jacket today, the outdoor industry immediately points you toward highly technical synthetic coats. They sell you on the magic of Gore-Tex, polyurethane coatings, and complex chemical durable water repellent sprays. They charge you $400 for a jacket that looks like you are about to climb Mount Everest. Here is the dark secret of the modern synthetic rain jacket. It is a ticking time bomb. The waterproof membrane is fundamentally a microscopically thin layer of plastic laminated directly to the nylon face fabric. After a few years of exposure to your body oils, dirt, and heavy rain, that plastic membrane will inevitably undergo a chemical failure known as delamination. The plastic literally peels away from the fabric in flakes. The jacket loses all of its waterproofing, it cannot be repaired, and it goes directly into the garbage. Barbour looked at the failure of modern plastic and decided to stick with a technology invented for desperate sailors in the brutal North Sea. Barbour builds their legendary jackets using heavy Egyptian cotton tightly woven into a dense canvas. But cotton absorbs water. So they saturate the raw canvas with a heavy, proprietary blend of heated wax. This waxed cotton is an absolute revelation. It stops the freezing wind, it forces heavy rain to sheet right off the surface, and it is incredibly resistant to tearing when you walk through heavy thorns or dense brush. But the true genius of Barbour, and the reason it is a permanent fixture on the Buy It for Life list, is the absolute refusal to use planned obsolescence. When the heavy wax coating eventually wears thin at the shoulders and elbows after years of brutal weather, the jacket is not dead. You simply send it back to the Barbour repair facility, or you buy a tin of their heavy wax, heat it up on your kitchen stove, and manually rub the wax right back into the cotton canvas. You literally rebuild the waterproof membrane using nothing but friction and heat. Because the jacket is made of heavy, natural canvas instead of sterile plastic, it records your specific physical life. The areas where your arms bend develop deep, beautiful creases. The wax fades slightly where your seatbelt rubs. The jacket develops an incredible patina that cannot be faked in a factory. One longtime owner wrote, "I bought a classic Barbour Bedale jacket 25 years ago. I have worn it through torrential storms and heavy farm work. I re-wax it every 2 years. When the cuffs finally started to fray after 2 decades, I mailed it to their repair center. They beautifully patched the cuffs with heavy leather and sent it back. It is not just a piece of clothing. It is a physical record of my life. The synthetic outdoor industry demands that you replace your expensive rain shell every 5 years. Barbour builds an immortal shield that gets better with every single storm. A jacket that lasts 50 years is an engineering miracle, but the next brand on our list proves that genuine luxury is not a giant, flashy logo. It is the absolute refusal to compromise on leather. Number 2. Cuyana, the lean closet movement. The accessible luxury handbag market is one of the most profitable grifts in modern fashion. Brands like Michael Kors, Kate Spade, and Tory Burch have convinced millions of women that spending $300 on a tote bag is a great investment. It is an absolute illusion. When you buy a bag from these accessible luxury titans, you are rarely buying premium leather. You are buying heavily corrected grain leather. This means they take the absolute cheapest, lowest quality layer of the animal hide, sand away all of the natural imperfections, and press a fake, uniform plastic texture over the top. This is known as Saffiano leather. It feels stiff, it smells like chemicals, and it is essentially coated in a plastic shell. To make matters worse, they finish the edges of the straps with a cheap, rubbery edge paint. After 6 months of hanging on your shoulder, that cheap rubber edge paint begins to aggressively peel off in long, ugly strips. The heavy gold logo remains shiny, but the physical bag falls apart. Cuyana entered the market with a different, highly aggressive philosophy. Their entire corporate manifesto is 2 words: fewer, better. They do not chase seasonal trends. They do not run clearance sales to dump old inventory. They design beautiful, timeless, structural essentials, and they manufacture them using materials that shame the luxury houses. Their legendary classic tote bag is a masterclass in buy-it-for-life engineering. They bypass the cheap Asian factories used by the mall brands and source their leather from high-end, highly regulated tanneries in Italy and Argentina. They use full-grain and top-grain pebble leather. Because the leather is not heavily corrected and smothered in plastic, it actually remains soft and pliable. It absorbs the natural oils from your hands, developing a rich, beautiful slouch and a deep patina over time. Instead of hiding raw edges with cheap rubber paint, they use heavy saddle-grade stitching to lock the seams in place. They do not use obnoxious gold logos to advertise their brand. They let the sheer weight and drape of the premium leather speak for itself. One reviewer noted, "I used to buy a new designer tote bag every single year because the straps would always fray and crack. I finally bought a Cuyana leather tote 5 years ago. I use it as a heavy work bag, throwing a laptop and water bottles into it daily. The straps have not yielded, the leather hasn't cracked, and the interior is pristine. It cured my desire to buy another handbag." The accessory industry wants you to treat leather like a temporary, seasonal trend. Cuyana provides the permanent cure for the cluttered, disposable closet. Cuyana fixes your accessories forever, but our final brand sits at the absolute foundation of your body. They build a product so durable and so structurally intense that modern shoe companies actively try to hide their own manufacturing process from you. Number 1. Red Wing Heritage, women's, the immortal sole. Look at the shoes sitting in your closet right now. Whether they are expensive designer boots, heavy winter snowshoes, or casual leather sneakers, 99% of them share a dark, fatal manufacturing secret. They are built using cemented construction. This means the upper part of the shoe is attached to the rubber sole using nothing but industrial chemical glue. To save money, the manufacturer fills the empty space inside the sole with cheap, air-injected EVA foam. The moment you start walking, the clock is ticking. After a few hundred miles, that cheap interior foam compresses and dies. It loses all of its shock absorption, and more importantly, When the rubber tread on the bottom of the shoe finally wears flat, the entire boot is useless. You cannot simply peel the glue apart and stick a new sole on. You have to throw the entire expensive leather boot into the trash can. Red Wing Heritage views cemented construction as an absolute insult to the consumer. Red Wing has been building heavy-duty boots in Minnesota since 1905. While their famous men's work boots are legendary, their dedicated women's heritage line is the absolute pinnacle of buy-it-for-life footwear. They do not use a single drop of structural glue to attach the sole. They use a centuries-old, highly complex shoemaking technique known as the Goodyear-welt. In a Goodyear-welted boot, a thick strip of heavy leather, the welt, is physically stitched directly to the upper leather of the boot and the heavy leather insole. Then, the thick rubber outsole is stitched directly to the welt. This mechanical stitching creates an impenetrable fortress against water and mud. But the true gold mine is what happens when the boot inevitably wears down. When you walk on concrete for 5 years and wear the rubber tread flat, you do not throw the boot away. You take it to a local cobbler. The cobbler simply cuts the heavy thread, pulls the old rubber sole off, and mechanically stitches a brand new rubber sole right back onto the existing welt. You keep the beautifully aged, perfectly broken-in upper leather, and you get a brand new engine on the bottom. You can repeat this process infinitely. Red Wing tans their own leather in their own private facility, meaning the hides are incredibly thick and heavily infused with natural oils. Furthermore, they fill the empty cavity of the sole, not with cheap plastic foam, but with hot, natural cork. As you walk, the heat of your foot actually melts the cork, forcing it to permanently mold to the exact, unique shape of your individual footprint. One dedicated customer wrote, "I bought a pair of Red Wing Iron Rangers 6 years ago. The break-in period was brutal because the leather is so thick, but after 3 weeks, they became custom molds of my feet. I have had them resoled twice. The upper leather looks like vintage perfection. They are heavy, they are indestructible, and they will absolutely outlive me." The modern shoe industry relies entirely on the failure of chemical glue to force you back into the store. Red Wing uses heavy thread, steel shanks, and dense leather to ensure you only ever have to buy the boot exactly once. You now know that Darn Tough will replace your socks for life. You know American Giant weaves indestructible armor. You know Pendleton wool defies the passage of time. You know Barbour jackets use heavy wax to defeat the storms. You know Cuyana refuses to compromise on Saffiano plastic. And you know that Red Wing uses the mechanical genius of the Goodyear-welt to make footwear immortal. Stop funding the billionaires who want you dressed in disposable garbage. Stop paying the luxury logo tax for products that fall apart in the washing machine. Share this video right now with a woman who is tired of throwing away her favorite clothes because the seams ripped or the soles fell off. Let's help everyone rebuild their wardrobes with absolute, uncompromising quality. If you think the clothing industry is a scam, you have absolutely no idea what they are doing to your grocery store. Click on that next video on your screen to see the dark truth hiding in the meat department. We will see you there. Thanks for watching.